Have you ever wondered if your relationship is dysfunctional? Yeah. Have you ever wondered if your relationship or the system that you're in, the organization that you're in, or even if your own behaviors are dysfunctional? Look, today we're going to look at the 5 signs of dysfunction. It doesn't matter whether it's if we're talking about, like I said, the job organization that you're working with, or if we're talking about friendships that you have, if we're talking about your marriage, your relationship with your children, sometimes those systems or those relationships are dysfunctional. And we're going to look at the 5 characteristics to be aware of that make something functional or dysfunctional. My name is Dean Sinceri. I've been a professional counselor, my wife and I, for over 30 years. And we're really in, we're driven to help families, relationships to be absolutely the best, to be functional, life-giving, and healthy. And so that's our heart, is for you to achieve that and to have that in your life. And so stay tuned. We're going to look at the 5 um, characteristics of dysfunction. And also, we're not just going to leave you there. We're going to talk about ways and things that you can do to help you change and come out of that system. But before we get into that, let's look at the difference of what do we mean when we talk about functional and dysfunction? When I talk about something functional, it's an individual, or it's a relationship, or it's a group, or it's an organization that is life-giving, that is healthy, that is respectful, honoring, edifying, which means it builds you up, and it's functioning as it's originally intended. When I talk about dysfunction, I'm talking about an individual, a relationship, a group, or organization that is life-taking, that's actually taking life from you. It's unhealthy. It could be abusive. It's a system that's destructive, and it's not functioning as it was originally intended to do. And so, as we look at this difference between functioning and dysfunctioning, I want you to evaluate how this applies to your marriage, to your relationships, to the organization of your job, to your social groups, and to be able to be sensitive to these very things of identifying, is this what I'm in? Is it a functional system? Is it a dysfunctional system? Let's look at the 5 signs of a dysfunctional system. And what is the first sign? The first sign is denial. Yeah. What is denial? Is that, say, in a relationship, what is experienced is different than what is said publicly. If my marriage is falling apart, we're having a really hard time, and then people on the outside say, "How are y'all doing?" "Oh, we're doing great. We're doing awesome." Look, that's denial. That's what we're presenting in the public is different than what's going on behind doors. That sometimes happens in families. It might be riddled with addiction or alcoholism. And there's what's going on the inside is very different than what's being presented on the outside. We call that denial. Another aspect of denial is that secrets that no one is talking about or addressing. Denial, excuse me, means that there are secrets that are in that system that individuals aren't talking about or not dealing with. You know, a secret is something that no one knows, or sometimes a secret is something that everybody knows and no one is talking about. Think about this as it applies. It could even apply to something as big as the government. That there's secrets, there's agendas going on inside the inner circle that's not being revealed on the outer side of the inner circle. And they're obvious, yet no one is actually addressing or talking about them. Another sign of denial, aspect of denial, is individuals are punished for speaking the truth. You know, we had this, there's been a lot of debate about this whole issue with COVID that we had as a nation and as a public health crisis. And we were dealing with as a nation. What was interesting, which I knew there was denial part of it, is that people that came out and tried to speak about what they believed the truth was were actually being punished. They're actually being shut down, fired from their jobs, let go. You know, what's the truth? What's not the truth? I'm not really sure, but I do know that there was a high level and system of denial that was going on. That can also happen in a relationship. It can happen in a marriage. You know, sometimes there is say that the husband is abusing the wife and there's dysfunction going on, and that's obvious inside the system. But if the wife began to speak about that outside of the system, there would be the threat of punishment or more violence. And so the person is held back. That's what we mean by denial. So the first sign of a dysfunctional system is levels of denial. Let's look at the second sign of a dysfunctional system. Lack of accountability. Yeah, in a dysfunctional system, there's lack of accountability. There's a refusing to take accountability for actions. Look, in a healthy system, if I mess up, if I make a mistake, I say, honey, I'm sorry. I had good intentions, but it didn't work out. I'm really sorry. What do I need to do to take care of that? In a dysfunctional system, if I make a mistake, then I'm blaming it on everything. I made a bad investment. Yeah, it's because of the stock market. It's because it is. It's everybody else's fault, and I'm not taking accountability for my own actions. The sign of a dysfunctional system. Another is placing blame on others. Yeah, not taking responsibility, placing blame. Go back to an example. If I make a bad investment, I'm placing the blame on my stockbroker. I'm placing blame on other people. I'm placing blame on companies. No, I'm the one who made the investment. I'm responsible for it. The right thing is to say, look, I made a bad decision. I'm sorry. I'll see what I can do to rectify it. But in a dysfunctional system and having lack of accountability is always placing blame on others. You know, I'm sorry to say that at times it seems like our present administration on the federal level is placing blame on everybody and everything. I mean, we're dealing with this huge inflation. We're dealing with different things with gasoline. It's a multi-complex issues going on. But when you continually place blame on other people and other situations, then it's never going to change because you're not taking personal responsibility. Another sign of a dysfunctional system is that giving responsibility of one's actions to the other person. Giving responsibility of one's actions to another person. For example, if we go back to the family system where there's domestic abuse and the husband is hitting the wife. Well, if you didn't make me so aggravated, I wouldn't have hit you. If you would treat me nicer, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't. Look, it's never okay to hit, right? But if in a dysfunctional system and not taking responsibility, is that they continue to give the responsibility of their own actions on other people. If my job wasn't so stressful, I wouldn't need to drink so much. If the kids wasn't so loud, I wouldn't need to have, 10 beers at night. It's always projecting, giving responsibility, lack of accountability. It's a hallmark sign of a dysfunctional system. Listen, have you ever had any experiences with a dysfunctional system? And how did you deal with that? Yeah, write down in the comments. Tell us. So let's look at number 3, the third characteristic of a dysfunctional system. Weaponizing fear. Fear is a natural emotion that we all experience. But when we weaponize fear, we use it to control and we use it to keep people off balance. Hallmark sign of a dysfunctional system. Using fear and terror to control behavior. Listen, it may work for a little while, but it's not going to work on the long haul. Often came across this in sports, played a lot of different sports and sometimes coaches would get frustrated with the performance of their players, and they would rage and they would scream and they would want to control their behavior by instilling fear. But that's not the best way to get the best performance out of a player. If they're scared to mess up again, and their muscles are tightened and their mind is racing and they're not able to relax, you're not going to get the best performance. In fact, the teams that I performed best with were the teams that I really felt loved and I felt cared for by my coaches, and I wanted to please them. I wanted to do the absolute best. It's the same in any system. If you're motivating people through fear, you're not going to get the best results. If you're motivating them through love, care, and concern, that's a functional system. When you weaponize fear, there's often displays of unpredictable anger and rage. What do I mean by that? There's often, at any moment now, someone who's in the system can pop off, lose their temper, and it keeps everyone else off balance. It's a form of controlling people. But there's these weaponizing of fear by using rage and anger to keep people off balance. We often describe that atmosphere as walking on eggshells. Have you ever experienced that you were in an atmosphere where you were just on edge, you were anxious, and you were constantly walking on eggshells? It's a hallmark sign of a dysfunctional system. And someone or somewhere or individuals are weaponizing and using fear. As we go through this, you may even identify that in systems. But if you do your own self-reflection, you can say, well, am I using any of these hallmark signs to deal with relationships or in organizations that I have leadership in, and taking ownership of that, knowing that it ends up being something that will be life-taking and destructive and hurtful to other people. Let's look at the fourth sign of a dysfunctional system. Deflecting attention. When an issue is brought up, changing the subject quickly. That's called deflecting attention. I have a problem with the drinking last night. Yeah, well, that movie was really boring. I didn't enjoy it. In fact, that's why I had another one. I was so bored. And all of a sudden, the conversation's diverted and it's all about the movie. And it's no longer about the subject that you brought up. Deflecting attention is keeping attention on minor problems. Sometimes it happens in government. We have, even in our city of New Orleans right now, we have massive issues with crime. We have infrastructure issues. And oftentimes the attention at times that's being given are on other smaller or minor issues. That's a deflecting attention. That can happen in family systems. That can be blatant problems that need to be addressed. And then individuals get overly focused on the smaller problems and totally ignore the bigger problems. That can happen in government, that can happen in marriages, that can happen in any friendship, is that we're ignoring, we call it the pink elephant in the room, and we're talking about the little things and ignoring the big thing. That's hallmark for a dysfunctional system. It's keeping dismissing your reality as fantasy. Yeah. Have you ever felt that what you're really seeing, hearing, and feeling, and someone invalidating that to such an extent that the message that they're giving you is that it's just a fantasy, that you're making it up in your head, dismissing your reality and saying it's just a fantasy? That's the hallmark of a dysfunctional system. You know, it's really challenging as individuals if you're dealing with either in a family system or a relationship that has a number of these characteristics, because it's so life-taking, and it challenges our own realities, and we start to learn to disconnect from what we see, what we feel, what we perceive. And when that happens, it causes lots of problems when we start creating disconnection from ourselves. So it has a lot of ramifications. Let's look at number 5. The fifth characteristic of a dysfunctional system is there's life-taking encounters. Listen, any relationship, any organization is going to either be building you up or it's going to be taking life from you. And dysfunctional systems, dysfunctional relationships are life-taking encounters. When you leave those encounters, those experiences, oftentimes you feel manipulated and controlled. Oftentimes you feel confused. Oftentimes you just literally feel drained of energy and you feel exhausted. Have you ever gotten in an argument with your spouse and it was a real dysfunctional encounter and you left confused, manipulated, controlled, and totally exhausted? It's a hallmark sign of a dysfunctional system or a dysfunctional relationship. So, what to do? What is it that you do if you're in a dysfunctional system? These are 3 commitments that I encourage you to do. Is number 1, get healthy external validation and support. Yeah, get healthy external validation and support. That's where sometimes counseling can come in. You have a good counselor that's an outside point of view that can speak life into you, give you external validation that what you're seeing, feeling, and hearing is real, and giving you support. That can be done with a close friend. That can be done with uh, perhaps a pastor, a trusted religious leader. That can be done in a variety of support group meetings. I know that AA has been such a hallmark place to help so many people that struggled with alcoholism, the dysfunctional system of alcoholism, and then go into the support group meeting and they learn a different lifestyle, learn a healthier, more functional way of living, and get validated, get support, get new connections, and so forth. So you adamantly need, if you're in a dysfunctional system, is to get healthy and external support. You also, secondly, need to commit to taking care of yourself. When you're stuck in a dysfunctional system, it becomes so emotionally draining, it becomes so life-taking that you need to make a commitment to take care of yourself, to take care of yourself physically, to make sure you're eating right, getting proper sleep, having fun in your life, doing hobbies that bring you life, engaging in relationships that are life-giving to you, doing all the basics of taking care of yourself. But that's going to strengthen you and give you the power to get out of the system. The more dysfunctional the system is, the more you're engaged in that system, the more oftentimes isolated and disconnected you get from others. So you need to break that by taking care of yourself. The third thing, which is very important, is you need to learn to set healthy boundaries. Excuse me. You have to learn to set healthy boundaries in a system that's dysfunctional. And sometimes that means leaving the system. Sometimes it means staying in the system, but being able to set certain boundaries. Look, if you're dealing with someone that struggles with an addiction, one of the boundaries could be I don't discuss very important topics while they're using or while they're high or while they're intoxicated. Another one might be, after a certain point, I don't engage in conversation. Um, there's specific boundaries, healthy boundaries that you need to begin to engage in order to take care of yourself. So if you're in a dysfunctional system, do those three things: get healthy external validation and support. Number two, commit to taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. And third, learn to set healthy boundaries. Look, we want you to have life-giving relationships, be involved with life-giving systems, but sometimes you're just in a dysfunctional system, and sometimes you have to learn to take care of yourself within that system. There's a resource I'd like to share with you all, which would, if you'd like to go deeper in this, is it's a book I read a while back. A real fan of John Bradshaw. He wrote, and it was a New York Times #1 bestseller, Bradshaw on the Family. And he talks about dysfunctional systems in families, as a family is a dysfunctional system. And he really breaks down what it is, a lot more depth than I have, the characteristics, how to come out of it, how to identify it. It's really a wonderful resource. I have a link for this book in the description below. So feel free to get that if you're interested in going deeper and learning how to come out of that in a real life-giving way. And also, we have, like I said, the important thing was developing skills to deal with dysfunction. The third one was setting boundaries, learning how to take care of yourself through setting boundaries. And we did a video a while back on boundaries and how to set them. And so if you want to really implement that third skill and learning that skill even sharper, I want you to click on that video now and watch that. And that's going to be real helpful for you. Thanks for tuning in to I Have a Voice, and God bless.